Hi, everyone. Welcome to Conejo Valley Visionaries, a weekly podcast spotlighting the people and stories behind your favorite Conejo Valley businesses. I'm your host, Christina Dunstead. Today, we're speaking with Jonathan Woodward, the organizer of the first ever Conejo Valley Comedy Festival, which takes place February 21st and 22nd. Jonathan shares how his love of comedy, his marketing background, and support from his wife led him to create the unique event. We'll discuss the business sides of organizing a large-scale festival, including community engagement, family-friendly programming, and strategic partnerships. Plus, Jonathan offers insights into his vision for the future of comedy in the Conejo Valley and its broader impact. If you enjoyed this episode and find value in the podcast, please leave us a 5-star review and rating. This helps more folks in the Conejo Valley find the podcast, and that helps each story reach more people. With that, please enjoy my conversation with Jonathan Woodward of the Conejo Valley Comedy Festival. Hey, Jonathan. Thank you so much for joining me today on Conejo Valley Visionaries.
Absolutely. My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Of course. I am excited to learn more about the Conejo Valley Comedy Festival, how this all came to be, what your background is. Do I understand correctly? It is the first of its kind out here?
Yeah. First of its kind. Intention was to bring together a bunch of different types of comedic acts. So not just improv or just stand up or those sorts of things, and bring it all together. And so we have, I have a young son, and so we're a newer kind of growing family. And another intention was for there to be stuff for all different types of age groups and kids and stuff like that. So yeah, I think it is a first of its kind, and we're really excited.
Okay. Well, we'll get to more about that, but let's, what we like to do here is go back to the beginning.
Yeah.
And what did you want to be when you grew up?
Oh man. So I remember early on, I was really into video games, and so I remember, Nintendo 64 came out, and my friends and I would play that, and I was like, I was thought, oh, I'll be like a video game designer, and design video games just because I loved it so much. Obviously, as I grew up, that became less of a open avenue and like practical for me, but was really cool. And like I remember early on, I don't know, I just loved like the storytelling of the games and like bringing people together. And yeah, like early days, that's what I wanted to be.
Okay. And why did you feel like it wasn't a possibility? Were you a designer? Like which part of it did you feel like you wanted to
Yeah.
do?
I think it was this thing where a lot of times you have this like idealized notion of what it means to design video games. And so when I was playing them, I was like, oh, this is great. You just design the games, right? And that's like your job. You play video games all day. And I remember, I think it was in middle school, I did like an informational with someone who worked on the games,
That's
and
awesome.
he said, oh, it's high intensity. Like we're almost never playing the game. We're like designing it, and then there's like testers who play the game. And so yeah, I was like, okay, this is probably not for me.
That's great. I wonder if that person knew that they dashed your
Yeah.
your
Yeah.
dreams, but that is great. And how sort of astute of you to do an informational interview in middle school. So
Yeah.
okay, so you that no longer wanted to be a a video game designer, but what did you end up deciding to study in school or sort of pursuing?
Yeah, I always was really interested. Well, in school, I was more interested in like the social side of school, and having fun, and then it wasn't until I went to Moore Park College, community college nearby, and I met a professor there named Dr. Falders, who's a philosophy professor, and he just kind of gave me a lot of direction in terms of like taking the class, which is all about Aristotle, and I loved kind of thinking about problems, and to this day thinking about problems and philosophical frameworks and stuff is super fascinating to me.
Hmm.
And so studied philosophy, transferred to UC Berkeley where I studied philosophy, but my family is actually one of entrepreneurs, so business and starting businesses has always kind of been in the background, and so yeah, I did philosophy and then quickly transitioned over to kind of like business proper.
Got it. What kind of businesses were you growing up with in terms of your family?
Gosh, there was a flower business, like selling and delivering flowers. There was I actually owned a DJ business in high school,
Hmm.
and supported myself through that business and venture, which was really really fun, but wild to be doing that at like 17 years old, 16 years old.
Did you grow up in the Conejo Valley?
I did, yeah. So
Okay,
I went to Camarillo High School
got it.
and grew up here. My wife is from Thousand Oaks, and then we met at Moore Park.
Okay.
Yeah,
So you had ideas, you were surrounded by entrepreneurs and you yourself were one at a young age. Studied philosophy, really
yeah.
interesting. So the theoretical, and then when you decided to go into business, did you study that at all at Berkeley, or you graduated and then just what was the
Yeah.
transition like?
Yeah, I laugh because I was taking philosophy classes and I loved it. I really did enjoy them. However, at Berkeley, it was very like ivory tower, kind of solo, thinking and in theory to your point. And so I laugh because I would sneak into the Haas School of Business lectures, and I wasn't an actual like proper student there, but I would sneak in and like listen to lectures. And I think I went to like all the, they'd have community speakers come and talk and stuff. And yeah, so I didn't formally study business, but I like snuck into these classes and met with
Smart.
people constantly. Yeah.
Did you, when you graduated, start a business, or did you go into a career that was more business oriented?
Yeah, so this was around like 2008, 2009 financial crisis. And so yeah, it was a wild time. And I remember Teach for America was recruiting at Berkeley, and so I actually went down that path. So I
Mm.
actually started my career post Berkeley as a teacher with Teach for America in South Central LA at a middle school called View Park Middle School. And it was great. Was there for a few years, really enjoyed it. And then, my background's been really eclectic. I've kind of pivoted to various things, but I think the through line has been this kind of theory and then application, and like practitioner is something that's super important to me.
Okay. How did where did the idea for comedy, or have you always loved comedy as just a hobby, or tell me a little bit
Yeah,
more where comedy came into your life?
yeah. My mom, she's super funny. She's like the funniest person I know. She can make me laugh harder than anyone, and and so comedy was always like in the house, and she's a funny person, and so yeah, like watching Jim Carrey, like Ace Ventura, Pet Detective, and all these things, like this would be like a central point of our family, and so I always had an interest in it, and then I didn't really take like action on comedy until I joined Upright Citizens Brigade in LA, like in 20, gosh, that was probably 2013, 2014, and took
Mm.
improv classes and got like really into the culture there, and I loved it. Like I loved it so much. But that was really the spark, was like my mom and that being around the family, and then taking some classes at UCB.
I mean, and that's an incredible program too. I imagine you were with some really funny people and learning from the
Yeah,
best there. And
yeah.
you picked that up. Were you still working at Teach for America then when you started those classes?
No, at that point I was doing consulting. So I was consulting and then taking these classes, and it was cool, but it's like all consuming. If some of my classes, I was there to have fun and and like learn how to do improv, but some of my classmates were very legitimately trying to be on Saturday Night Live, or
Right.
or like make it in the industry. And so that was cool too.
I in a corporate job in New York, one of like a community or like a group training was doing an improv class. Like that was,
Oh, nice.
intended for as in business, how to leverage improv to, I guess, be a better business person or work together. Have you found skills not only obviously in starting a comedy festival, but just in terms of your day to day that you've learned from improv? That maybe apply to how to operate.
Yeah, for sure. I actually think there's a lot. I mean, the first one that comes out immediately is actually just interviewing. Is that has been such a unlock, is because when you're preparing for an interview, you'll take notes and you'll practice and stuff. But as you know, any kind of interview, you can't forecast exactly what's going to be asked. And so I do think my improv training allowed me to think more quickly on my feet.
Yeah.
I think that is one. And then the second thing that I take to heart is just the collaborative nature of improv, and working with people and teams, and kind of that like yes and I think
Yes.
it's super easy to when you're brainstorming an idea, people thinking about, oh, here's all like the 50 ways this is not going to work, or have you considered this, but it's actually much harder to think about, oh, this is great, and here's how we're going to do it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, no, it is. I think that was the intention when we did that improv class before, and I still sometimes have to
Yeah.
remind myself it's yes and, not but. It's like,
Yeah,
this is
exactly.
challenging.
Right.
Okay, so did you ever think you would want to professionally pursue comedy? It sounds like this was just for fun.
Yeah.
And then at what point did you say, actually, I'll start a comedy festival instead?
Yeah. My friends and family have encouraged me to go down the professional route. I've just met so many comics and people in the industry that like it's just not the lifestyle for me. Like I just think you just have to be so committed, and you're rejected constantly. That's like kind of the whole game. And I think for me it was like, no, I just want to have fun and not turn this into anything more than that. And to your question of why start the comedy festival, though, I think my background has been in the kind of community engagement and getting people together, and I do think people are less connected than ever, like more connected than ever technologically, but less connected in other ways.
Yeah.
And so I was thinking, we live here now in Thousand Oaks, and my wife and I would complain about like there's not enough like fun stuff to do, and there's bars and this, that, and the other, but and then she sort of said at one point, she's like, well, if you want to live in that type of community, like you might need to create that. Like if
Hmm.
that's what you want,
Oh,
you might need
there
to
she
create it.
goes. I love that. That's a good partner.
Yeah, exactly. And I was like, yeah, that's a good point. So, anyways, that was kind of the genesis of wanting to start the festival.
Because are there places out here where you would be able to catch a comedy show, or were you having to go in LA if you wanted to watch a comedian?
Yeah, I think so what I found is there are a few kind of like one-offs here and there, but they're pretty few and far between. And they're also for like one intended audience, which I would say is, just like, older parents, or you know what I mean? Like things like that. And so if you wanted to see kind of like newer up and coming comics, yeah, you'd have to kind of go, an hour away or so into LA. And
Yeah.
so yeah, that was the thought too, is like, could we bring that out here? And kind of create that community here.
Okay. And why not pursue opening a comedy club versus a festival?
Yeah, yeah, good question. So I have always lived my life by this, just this philosophy of like, don't check the depth of the river with both feet. Like try one foot first and,
Okay.
kind of see how it goes. And so I was, I've been really lucky to have people in my life in the comedy space and world, and so this was kind of a good way to say like, oh, is there interest here? Like
Mhm.
maybe I'm only one, or like other people interested in comedy and those sorts of things.
Yeah.
But yeah, comedy club would be awesome too.
No, but it makes sense. Test the water. It's a little market research,
Yeah,
but still, I imagine a lot of work to put together.
yeah.
How long ago did you first come up with this idea?
Came up with the idea in the summer of 2024. So I'm a part of a improv troupe here through the Conejo Players Theater, which is a theater in Thousand Oaks,
Hmm.
and they had put on an improv festival, I think in 2023. So it was exclusively improv, and I kind of had pitched this idea of, well, what if it's not only improv but stand up and kids and things like that. And it's been awesome. Like the amount of kind of community reception and people that have been bought into it has been fantastic.
What was the process to get it started? You have this idea, summer 2024. What was the first thing you did?
Yeah. First thing I did is I I think just because of my like profession, I made a PowerPoint and like created like, okay, what's the problem? What are we trying to solve? Like what's the opportunity type of thing? Just to pressure test it a little bit and put some structure around it. And then I talked to my wife about it. That's typically like step two, and got her thoughts. And I know if she's on board, kind of like, oh, I think that'd be interesting. There's probably something to it, like at least something to look into. And then yeah, and then started socializing it with community partners. The first being Conejo Players Theater.
So your first presentation, was it in the shape of a kind of like a business plan or more just high level SWOT analysis?
Yeah, yeah. So what I found too is in organizing these kind of like creative endeavors is a lot of times the people who are doing this things are creatives themselves. Like they're actually comics, they're X, Y, and Z. And so I've seen decks from those types of folks in terms of like they're much more in like the big ideas and we'll do this and it's awesome. Like the creativity is far superior than what I can come up with. But I knew that in order for this to be successful, there had to be some like structure and and like put some structure behind it. And so, yeah, it was less of a business plan and more of in the sense of, and here's the revenue we'll generate and that sort of thing, but more of like problem statements. What's the opportunity? Why might this be a cool thing to do?
Mm-hmm. May I ask, are you also working? You have a full-time job. This is a side project. Is that what I understand?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. And then and we also spoke about this off camera, but you're also an adjunct professor. Is that kind of
Yeah.
balancing several
Hmm.
things? And do you work in marketing business now? Is
Yeah.
marketing your background? Okay.
Yeah, marketing is my background.
Okay.
Yeah, marketing is my background, and then I love to teach, just because as I said, like with Teach for America, I think that like planted a seed within me. I love teaching. I love giving back, and connecting with students and stuff.
Okay. Got it. So it sounds like all of that, like a marketing business mind, your ability to teach or bring people together, your love of comedy, all sort of came together in this comedy festival. So your wife gave approval, you move forward. Are there, how does it work to find the comedians, to bring awareness to the comedy festival? It's in February, right? So it's
Yeah.
coming up quick. We're
Yep.
getting closer. Did you are you on timeline with like what needs to be done and when and how those steps have all come together?
Yeah, yeah, it's interesting. So I've planned events before, like the TED conferences, and we did a TEDx at Loyola Marymount where I was kind of the lead organizer
Mm,
for that, and so that taught me a lot about logistics and planning and stuff. However, I was totally new to booking stand-ups and comedic acts and those sorts of things, and so luckily I've had good mentors and partners that have helped me kind of navigate those sorts of things. But yeah, it's been really fascinating. Like I think so much effort and time has been put into creating the structure and the schedule and recruiting the comics. And then we had an open submission process, so like anyone around the country could submit for the festival, and then we had to review all those and then slot them in the right spots, and then working with community partners that want to sponsor the event and those sorts of things. So yeah, I would say we're right on schedule. But transparently, this is a proof of concept, right? Like there's never been something like this, and so my hope is that it's received well and a lot of people come out. But frankly, no one really knows.
yeah. How would you describe it? We're considering, I've seen maybe your ad on social media. What do I want
Yeah.
to go? Why would I want to attend the Conejo Valley Comedy Festival?
Yeah, I think the top three things are: one, you get to see kind of top talent from throughout the country in your backyard. Comedians that have been on Conan and the Tonight Show, and these like big ticket, bigger name comedians down the street. At Tarantula Hill Brewing is on the first night, and then Conejo Players Theater on the second night. So that's the first one. I think the second one is, if you're a family with kids, having an opportunity to go out and have fun together. On Saturday, we have free workshops for kids and families, and I think that'll be a lot of fun. And then I think the third one is just community, as I said at the beginning, like having more time to connect with people that are like-minded, that enjoy comedy and like want to get together in our community. I think those are the three big ones.
Do you think that something like this could have existed when you were growing up out here, or has there been a shift towards an openness to a comedy festival?
Mm, I th- I think it could have. I think it could have. It didn't when I was growing up. And I think now, to give credit, I mean there's like open mic nights at various places throughout, but like I think it's pretty distinct, right? Like if you're going to like an open mic at a bar, that's like a pretty different experience than like a festival and bringing people together and stuff
Yeah.
like that. So I think I don't know, I think there's maybe always been a willingness, but I'm excited that this will be like the first time we
Yeah.
try it in our community.
Well, I also wonder because if you put an open submission out there to get people to be part of this Conejo Valley, one, did they know where that was?
Right.
Because
Yeah.
I think, before I moved here, I was like, what's the Conejo Valley?
Right.
I don't know. And Thousand Oaks calling it TO, it didn't make sense to me. Now I live here and, I'm involved and I get it more. But
Right.
was it a hard sell to get people interested in coming out here? Because I could see it being an attraction and that there's, when I talk to other business owners, there's obviously um, a demographic here that's open to certain things, but
Right.
also it's not LA. How do you
Yeah.
convince somebody that it's worth coming out here? Although the Civic Arts Center, they get a lot of good kind of headliners here
Yeah.
too. So I'm curious about that part of it. Like, how are you attracting people here?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think what it comes down to is, I think you're right. Like I think our community is we have like particular, I think certain things will work in Thousand Oaks that wouldn't work in LA and vice versa, right? And so I think it's being really transparent about that. I think the other thing is like this is just such a great place, as you know, like a great place to live. The people are fantastic and like really good. Like I think it's going to be a really good audience. So that's like another way that I pitch it, because I think the audience will be really good.
Hmm.
What I've had to do is kind of right size the expectations of the comedians and the audiences, right? So like,
Interesting.
yeah, so with the comedians, I've had to, I've been pretty transparent of like, this is not going to be the raunch, like like triple X, like this is not going to be that. But but I also think with our audiences, we're being really explicit with like show ratings, so that if you show up to a show, if there's curse words, it's not like a surprise, or that's why we have like designated family slots and those sorts of things. So
Smart.
I really think it's just been about, hey, this is a new kind of putting us on the map for comedians in the comedic area, and getting people out here.
Will there be local comedians on the schedule?
Yeah, there's actually several. There's several. So not only submitters from like Thousand Oaks, Camarillo, those sorts of things, but then also some of our headliners either are familiar with Thousand Oaks or from Thousand Oaks. So Eric Schwartz, who's a headliner, he'll be a part of the show, and he's actually from Thousand Oaks.
Hmm.
And then there's actually a pretty vibrant comedy community. It's just giving a platform.
Yeah. Tell me a little bit about the kid programming, because I do think that that probably is an important part of being out here, is having something that's also for families. What's going to be available and how can kids get involved? I thought this was really interesting. I have 6-year-old twins. I feel like it would be a fun activity or something for them
Yeah.
to be a part of. So what can somebody expect?
Yeah, that was really important to me. I to your earlier point, I didn't want to just do like another comedy show at a bar, and like it's only for adults and you can't bring kids. I think because we have a 20-month-old son, Amanda, my wife, and we're always looking for stuff to do, like I'm
Mhm.
sure you are too.
Yeah.
And so I said, oh, let's make sure that there's an opportunity for that. And so on Saturday from 10:45 till 12:15, there'll be improv games and workshops for families. So like you bring the kiddos, and they'll it's like a bunch of like fun and silly games, and then for the kids that are really into it and they're like, oh, I love this, this is a lot of fun, they'll actually have an opportunity to perform later in the afternoon, like low stakes, just like get on stage, see if you like it, that sort of thing. And then we'll have some food trucks out there in the afternoon. And so yeah, for the kids and families, we're hoping that there's a lot of offerings.
Yeah, that sounds so fun. And I love that part of it. And you get a little bit of something for everybody.
Yeah, and it's free. That's the other thing I should mention. The family programming is free. We wanted to make sure it was like things are so expensive these days. We wanted that to be free for the families and kids.
Very cool. What have you applied from maybe your other previous roles to this business venture? Oh, let me actually take one step back. You started your DJ business when you were in high school. Have you
Yeah.
started other businesses or before this one, or would you call this a business? How do you sort of frame this in your brain?
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, it's a business, but I think it's a business for good. So one is actually half of the ticket sales are going to go directly back to the theater. So Caneo Players Theater. So it's sort of a fundraiser for the theater in the space. And then the other thing too is, with the traditional business, you're trying to increase revenue, reduce cost type of thing. And so for us, it's all about creating this like virtuous cycle where as we generate funds from the festival, it's going to go back into the festival to do more of like the free programming, for kids and things like that. Because this is not my sole kind of focus in business, what I'm making my living off of.
Yeah,
I think eventually we're going to try and get nonprofit status and just try to make it more accessible to more people.
really cool.
But it is a business insofar as we're running ads and we're paying people and we're trying to have some like business acumen applied to the event.
Okay. Speaking of that, you mentioned sort of a longer term idea. What was your vision for it?
Yeah, so the vision is perfect world, Christina.
I'm here for
we,
it. Tell
we
me.
we we do the festival. It goes well. There's a lot of interest, and then I think we would probably host kind of pop up events, for kids and families and comedian fans throughout the year that support the festival. So the festival will be an annual thing, and then
Mhm.
there might be like quarterly pop up shows that we bring like great comics out, and there's things for people to do in the community. And then ultimately, like I think to your point, a comedy club, it would be great to open up a space that is dedicated for comedy and the arts and things like that would be fantastic.
Got it. What do you what does like surprise you the most about this process?
Hmm. Gosh, there's been there's been quite a few. I think one is hmm, I think one thing that's been surprising is it's um it's really hard to get the value proposition right of a business for an audience, because the truth is like we're all so busy, we have a million things going on, a million different things vying for our time and our energy. And so I think one thing is, initially I thought, oh, a comedy festival, who wouldn't want to be interested, everyone's going to go to that. But I've really had to refine the value prop, like why would I come out and how do we
Mhm.
make it cost effective and those sorts of things.
That's interesting. How closely has it aligned to your original analysis or your, sort of like value, how you were stating it in your original presentation?
It stayed pretty close. Luckily, we didn't have too much like mission or like vision drift too much. But I think it's still a question mark. I mean, luckily we're starting to sell tickets and like but we'll have a lot more data at the end of the festival. Like
Yes.
my hunch is that the family programming for kids and families is going to go really well because of the demographic and who lives here. However, I don't know. Maybe it's like no, there's a much bigger appetite for these like bigger name comics, and they actually want that. So yeah, we'll know a lot more in about a month.
I should say this is an interesting interview because we are talking prior to the actual event. So any learnings or challenges right now are, we might have to do a check-in afterwards to get
Yeah,
your overall thoughts afterwards.
for
But that's
sure.
an interesting challenge is like understanding how or I guess, yeah, how to figure out what the right value proposition is. What are you most proud of so far?
Hmm. I think I'm most proud of the community partnerships that we've been building, and just we've gotten like really tremendous reception to the idea when we've talked to different businesses and sponsors of, oh, this is great, like why don't we have this is like really people hopping on, which is fantastic. So really proud of that. And then I think the second thing is just really proud of the quality of acts that we're going to bring to Conejo Valley, and I think it's something unlike people have seen before. So I'm really excited about that. And then I think the final thing is like it's just been really cool to connect the dots. This improv troupe meeting this comedian, like that's been really cool.
Speaking of that, I have a couple of quick fire questions for you.
Yeah, sure.
And the first one would be who is your favorite comedian right now?
Jerry Seinfeld.
Okay,
Yeah, yeah,
interesting.
yeah.
Do you see him in stand up now or just from his Seinfeld days?
It's funny. I was never. It sounds bizarre. I was never a big Seinfeld fan of the show.
Oh no, that's
Not.
blasphemy.
I know. I mean, I liked it, but I'm not. Like a diehard. My father-in-law, Doug, is like a diehard Seinfeld fan. but
Okay.
not for me. I love his stand up. I've been lucky enough to see him live a couple times. What I appreciate about him more actually is he'll do interviews and podcasts and stuff, and just how funny his philosophy of life is on like kids and parents and just like life generally and observations. Like I love it.
Yeah, that's interesting. Okay. What is your favorite thing to do in the Conejo Valley?
Favorite thing? There's quite a few. I think we love taking our son. There's so many parks in the Conejo Valley, and so it sounds really basic, but like we just take our son to parks all the time. Like on walks, and he'll play. And Amanda and I, we've bopped around the country. We lived in the Bay Area, North Carolina, all over the place, and we just have a deep appreciation for the number of parks here. I think that's like our favorite thing.
Yeah. I am curious, as somebody who grew up here and then left,
Mhm.
what brought you back? Or,
Yeah, I think the number one thing was family. So our family still lives here. So
yeah.
my wife's parents uh, grew up here. Like my wife's grandmother was one like some of the first residents in Thousand Oaks,
Wow.
which is pretty awesome. So yeah, just like the family pool that's here. And then it's funny. Transparently, growing up when we were kids, growing up here, we were always like, this place is so boring. Like it's so boring. There's like nothing to do here. Like we couldn't wait to leave. And then as we've gotten older and have kids ourselves, we're like, oh, our parents were pretty smart.
Yeah.
Like, oh, okay, I got it. This is like a pretty ideal place to live. So yeah, that's kind of what brought us back.
I love it. No, I mean, I think it's interesting. Most people say one of their favorite things to do is something related to the open space, whether it's hiking or parks or whatever.
Right.
But also, how amazing that you're coming back to the community and trying to build the things that you want to see here that would maybe make it more interesting for people to live here too. So I think that it's very cool that you're giving back to the place where you grew up and making something from it.
Oh, thank you.
My last question for you is, what is one piece of advice you would give to a first time entrepreneur?
Hmm. I think my piece of advice would be to my piece of advice is that you learn through action and not thinking. And so there's this certain level of comfort in thinking through problems and not taking action against the problems. Because if you don't take action, you haven't made a mistake, right? And so I think a lot of times as entrepreneurs, we're constantly thinking about, well, what about this? And is this the right, do I have product market fit? And should I do more testing? And let me talk to customers. And I think the biggest issue is reading more books on how to how to start a business. And you know, but you only learn through the action. And I think, and to be clear, I've been at fault of this where I've been thinking about a business for years, like this would be great. And I don't, but you really only know if you have something until you take action. So I think just taking action, even if it's imperfect action, is how you'll get clarity. And really the important thing is to fail quickly, and if the idea is not a good one, just fail quickly and move on to the next one. But yeah, I think taking action.
That's fantastic. And I'm just curious, we kind of touched on it a little bit, but what made you take action to start this? Or how did you
Hmm.
have what was that what was the first thing you did, like from an action? You made the PowerPoint, but was it like,
Yeah.
what sort of was the tipping point?
I really think it was having the conversation with my wife Amanda of like, I got this idea, like what do you think? And she so we've been together almost 19 years, and I, like she's pushed me towards action. Where like she'll hear the idea out, you know what I mean? But she doesn't want to see a PowerPoint. She'll hear the idea out, but she's way more like, "Oh, you should do it." Like
Yeah.
what's the smallest action you could take, to validate that? And I luckily I have such a good partner because of that. But I think it was that. It was like conversation with her, building the PowerPoint. And then I think the scariest thing was like pitching it to strangers or like people who I didn't know.
Yeah. Amazing. Okay, so where can people give us all the information about the Conejo Valley Comedy Club? When is it? Where can people buy tickets? Are there
Yeah,
still ways to sponsor? Tell us all of that.
Yeah, absolutely. So if you go to ConejoValleyComedyFest.com is the number one source, and there you'll find our schedule. You can buy tickets there. Everything is outlined really explicitly there. We're also on Instagram at Conejo Valley Comedy Fest. The festival's 2 days. It starts on February 21st, Friday, at Tarantula Hill Brewing Company. They're our presenting sponsor for Friday. It'll be a lot of fun. It's a wonderful, wonderful place. Great beer and food there. And there'll be some great comics that night from 7 to 10:30. There's 2 shows then. And then on Saturday at Conejo Players Theater, we kick things off at around 10:45 a.m. for those family workshops and kid-related activities. And that'll be a blast. There's a bunch of workshops and shows. There's a speakeasy bar that Tarantula Hill's sponsoring in the back expansion area.
Ooh,
It'll be
now
cool.
I'm interested.
Yeah, exactly. So that'll be really cool. And yeah, we'd love to, have folks out there, and yeah, it's going to be a lot of fun. So looking forward to it.
Awesome. Maybe we can do a little giveaway, get some tickets away to the
Yes,
audience and
100%.
have people learn more about it. So this
Yes.
was really fun. And hey, congratulations on taking the action, getting this off the ground, putting together something that is new to the area. And, I really appreciate that it's not just for adults, but also for kids, and making it really accessible for us with families and wanting to do something cool. So I'm so excited to see how this comes together. I really mean it. We should, regroup after,
Yes.
Go over what you learned, because you're at that interesting stage where it is something that is kind of a proof of concept, and with a bigger vision in place, see, kind of how it met your expectations or went in a different direction, but maybe there's something to learn from that too.
Absolutely. No, I'd love to do that. Absolutely, to the giveaways. Christina, thanks so much for the time. And yeah, I really admire the work that you're doing. Congrats on your successes as well. And yeah, thank you so much. And yeah, happy to reconnect in a month or so.
Okay. Sounds great. Thank you. Make sure to subscribe to Conejo Valley Visionaries wherever you listen to podcasts so that you never miss an episode. And follow us at Conejo Valley Visionaries on Instagram. If you want to share your visionary story on the podcast, send us a DM. We are always open to guest nominations. This episode was produced by Christina Denstead and Justin K. Sloan. Conejo Valley Visionaries is edited by Justin K. Sloan and J. Sloan Productions.